Hi, everyone. Thanks for waiting. Um, it's so great to see so many names and faces that I recognize. So thanks everyone so much for joining. I really appreciate your guys' support. This is another healthy lifestyle talk. My name is Kalina Gardiner. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I work here at the hospital at Northern Inyo Healthcare District in Bishop, California. And a quick disclaimer before we start, this is pretty much just for general healthy nutrition. If you do have any like chronic underlying diseases or anything, make sure you talk with your doctor or your registered dietitian before you make any drastic changes. So today I'm going to be talking about life and longevity in the blue zones. And the blue zones are 5 parts in the world where people live statistically the longest. And starting off with, so the Danish study, it was published in 1996, and it established that only about 20% of how long the average person lives is dictated by our genes, whereas the other 80% is dictated by our lifestyle. So people were wondering, why is this? Why is so much dictated by our lifestyle, and what can we do in our lifestyles that can help us live longer and healthier? So this started a big research project, and it was called the Blue Zones. And the Blue Zones, they're kind of this concept, and it's not necessarily a geographical term. Researchers, like I said, found these 5 places where people live the longest and distilled this information, or they reversed engineered it to find out what people were doing to not only live the longest, but to also be really incredibly healthy. And we're going to be talking a lot about nutrition, but I'm also going to touch upon facets of lifestyles that are dominant in these regions that researchers really do believe are attributed to longevity. So the first one is Okinawa, Japan, where you find the longest living women there. Sardinia, Italy has the longest living men. Icaria, Greece. Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California, here in the United States. And this is particular with the Seventh-day Adventists, which is a type of religion, and they statistically live a good 8 to 10 years longer than the average person in the United States. So that's pretty incredible. I'm going to really dive into 3 of these regions. A lot of the themes really overlap in the regions, so I didn't want to make it too redundant. So we'll first begin with Sardinia, Italy. So this was the first blue zone that was identified in 2004. And researchers first went out there because they have this rare genetic quirk. It's called the M26 marker, and it's linked to exceptional longevity. And due to the geographic isolation of the area, it's really undiluted. And the result is nearly 10 times more centenarians per capita than the United States. And even more importantly, besides this genetic quirk or this gene that they have, residents of this area are also really culturally isolated. So they've kept to this super traditional and really healthy lifestyle. So in Sardinia, you're still going to find people that hunt, they still fish, and they harvest the food that they eat. And also, they remain super close with their friends and family throughout their lives. They're coming together, they're laughing a lot, they're gathering with their friends and loved ones, and they're also drinking wine together in almost every night. Also, it's a shepherd community where they are participating in regular, low-intensity activity every single day. And also, so they're constantly moving around. They are working with the animals, walking around, hiking around. Also, how they organize society is that they highly regard their elders. And in comparison to the United States, we kind of have this youth-centered society where we see mainly youth portrayed in advertisements or movies and the media in general. And all of these blue zones, they're really raising up the elders. They're highly regarding them. So let's take a look at their diet. The classic Sardinian diet consists of whole grain bread, beans, garden vegetables, and dairy. So the grain typically is in the form of barley, and the dairy comes from sheep and goat's milk. And so sheep and goat's milk, it has more protein, more vitamin A, more vitamin C, and it has less lactose than cow's milk. Also, grass-fed dairy has more omega-3s, which is anti-inflammatory. So the goats and the sheep, they're eating grass, so that raises up their omega-3s. Whereas here is in the United States, most of our dairy is corn-fed, and produces more omega-6s, and some omega-6s have been shown to increase inflammation in the body. Okay, Okinawa, Japan. The islands at the southern end of Japan have historically been known for longevity, and they were even once called the land of immortals. Okinawans have less cancer, less heart disease, and dementia than Americans, and women live here live longer than any other group of women on the planet. So traditionally, Okinawans have a strong dedication to friends and family. They maintain a really powerful social network, and it's this lifelong circle of friends that supports people well until their old age. And it's called a moai, and so they even have this vocab term for it, for their lifelong circle of friends. Also, Okinawans have a strong sense of purpose in life. It's a driving force. The Japanese call it ikigai. So older Okinawans can readily articulate the reason why they get up in the morning. Knowing their purpose gives them really clear roles of responsibility, and in turn, it produces feelings of being needed in their community and their families. So looking at their diet, their meals consist mainly of stir-fried vegetables, sweet potatoes. As you can see, 67% is sweet potatoes, and tofu. That meal is super high in nutrients, and it's really low in calories. And a lot of Okinawans have a garden where they grow vegetables that they eat. Also, the diet is super rich in soy, like tofu and miso soup. And tofu contains flavonoids, and flavonoids may help protect the heart and guard against breast cancer. Also, they enjoy a ton of fermented foods, and fermented foods contribute to a really healthy intestinal ecology. Okay, Loma Linda, California. So this is, like I said, the Seventh-day Adventists, and here they live as much as a decade longer than the rest of us, and much of their longevity might be attributed to their vegetarianism and their regular exercise. Also, they have a 24-hour Sabbath that they refer to as a sanctuary in time, and they go on nature walks during this time of their Sabbath. And this isn't just like they're doing it like every once in a while. This is every week for a lifetime that they're going on these nature walks with their families, with their loved ones. And I really thought this was a cool picture. I got it straight from the Seventh Adventist website, and they actually have a whole page dedicated to nature walks and good eating and diet and everything. I just thought that was so interesting. So looking at their diet, they mainly eat a lot of legumes and soy. They eat tons of vegetables and fruits. Their fruits and vegetables, what that makes up around like 60% of their diet. So they're doing mainly plants. And the Seventh-day Adventists, they don't do any alcohol, and they don't do any meat or poultry. I know it says 4% meat and poultry, so maybe some of them do, but typically they do not do any meat or poultry. Also, they're enjoying a super early light dinner. Okay, so I wanted to talk about like the blue zones, like they share so many similar eating styles and eating habits. And really the question here is, how can we adjust our eating habits to the blue zones? How can we bring the blue zones to us, and incorporating that into our lifestyle, and creating a little blue zone of our own where we live? So what are the blue zones doing? The blue zones are eating a ton of produce. They're typically eating between 90 and 100% plants. and they're having meat around 5 times a month. And the meat is typically the size of a deck of cards, around 3 to 4 ounces. And it is reserved for times of celebration. People are coming together, they're having the meat, and again, they're not having too much of it. So really we're focusing on this, on plants. So again, fresh produce, lean protein, chickpeas, white beans, chicken breast fits into that category, eggs, and also fatty fish. Fatty fish has a lot of omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. That includes tuna, sardines, mackerel, some nuts and seeds. Whole grains could be like quinoa, bulgur, farro. Farro is an incredible grain. If you've never tried it, it does contain gluten. So if you can't have gluten, don't get this. But farro is awesome. It's like this nutty grain that's super great. Herbs and seasonings. Sometimes people just think of herbs and seasonings as just flavor, additional flavor, but they really have like added health benefits. They have polyphenols and flavonoids that can really help protect our bodies from diseases. Also probiotics, which are fermented and cultured foods. So focusing on a plant slant. So colorful fruits and vegetables, they contain a variety of anti-inflammatory phytochemicals and fiber. And phytochemicals are known to downregulate inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein, or CRP, and also histamine. And then there's other inflammatory markers that the phytochemicals can downregulate or decrease. CRP has been shown to be elevated in people with angina, which is chest pain, myocardial infarction, which is heart attack, stroke, and vascular diseases. And just inflammation is totally necessary in the body. It does help fight infections, but a lot of times people experience this low-grade day-to-day inflammation, and that can be our enemy. So many major diseases that plague us, like including cancer, diabetes, arthritis, depression, and Alzheimer's, those have all been linked to chronic inflammation. And one of the most powerful tools that we have is to combat inflammation. Doesn't come from the pharmacy or anything, but rather it comes from the grocery store through the foods that we are eating. All right, what counts as a whole grain? So a whole grain includes the 3 layers. It includes the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. Whenever you have a refined grain, you're taking away the 2 outer layers and you only get the endosperm. And it's really shelf stable. It cooks quicker, but it also contains less fiber and less nutrition. So to find a whole grain, the package is going to read 100% whole grain, 100% whole wheat or sprouted grain. And our fiber goal is 27 to 37 grams per day of fiber. Also, fiber doesn't just come from whole grains, it does come from fruits and vegetables too. I wanted to show this label to you guys. They are starting to put this on to the products, the whole grain products. So 100% would be 100% of the grain that's in the product is a whole grain product. Then you get over to the 50%, 50% or more of the grain is a whole grain. And then you have the one with the no percentage, just 20 grams or more per serving in the product is whole grain. And this is a really easy way to identify a product that has more fiber and that is a whole grain. So this is just great for the consumer to be able to easily pick out a whole grain product. Not all products that are whole grain have this label, although they're starting to kind of expand this. So this is just a great, easy way for consumers to identify good products. So adjusting quality and quantity of fats and oils, what we want to do is increase the unsaturated fats because they're high in omega-3s. And remember, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So that includes including more fatty fish, more shellfish. Shellfish is a great way for omega-3s, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, soy, all the soy products, soy milk, soy tofu, things like that. That'll be higher in omega-3s. Also, olive oil and avocados have really good amounts of omega-3s in them. And we want to decrease the omega-6s. or excessive amounts of animal protein, which contains arachidonic acid, and that's been known to increase the inflammation in our bodies. Also processed foods and oils, which are high in omega-6s, like soybean oil, corn oil, safflower, those have more omega-6s versus omega-3s. And of course, avoiding the hydrogenated fats and trans fats that you will find in shortening, margarines, baked goods, and packaged foods. And so omega-6s are totally necessary in our bodies because, like I said, we do need that the inflammatory response. But here in the United States, we definitely have a disbalance. We have more omega-6s versus omega-3s. And what we really need is more omega-3s to omega-6s. All right, probiotics. So probiotics are fermented and cultured foods that provide good bacteria to the gut. And this is important. We have bacteria in our gut already, but we have good and bad stuff, but we want to have more good bacteria versus the bad bacteria. And probiotics can help with this. So making sure to get adequate sources of probiotics in the diet because probiotics can help support the gut ecology and to keep the digestive tract healthy. And it can balance our immune system, which can end up reducing inflammation. So you can find probiotics through miso, sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir or kefir, kimchi, kombucha, tempeh. Tempeh is a fermented soy patty.
I think you got a question.
Yeah, sure.
Over in Zoom.
Okay.
Dr. Sharma is asking, do homemade baked goods also have hydrogenated or trans fats?
Yeah, so good question. Since you're going to be making them yourself, I'll just go back to that slide. So you're making them yourself, so you can control what kind of fats that you're putting in them. I think a really good alternative is coconut oil. Coconut oil can kind of be replacing that shortening or the margarines. Shortening and margarines are typically, you're going to have them hydrogenated or they might be trans. Coconut oil, it is a saturated fat, but they contain MCTs, which is more research needs to be done on them to see if they actually kind of affect us the same way as saturated fats. So yeah, baked goods are homemade baked goods are going to be the best way to be able to control kind of what quality and what quality of fats that you're using.
Yeah, so when people make homemade goods at home, usually it's with butter, which is also, of course, saturated fat.
Mm-hmm.
So are you thinking coconut oil is better because of the medium chain triglycerides?
So I think that coconut oil would be better than the hydrogenated fats, like maybe a shortening or a margarine. I think that a butter is going to be totally appropriate, especially if you can get the grass-fed butter, because the grass-fed butter has more omega-3s in it versus the omega-6s. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And, and unfortunately, I food is, you have to pay for it. And of course, like the grass-fed dairy is typically a little bit more expensive. But if you can find that to splurge on those ingredients and those products, I think that's going to be better ultimately for our health.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that in Bishop for sale anywhere?
The grass-fed butter. I think that I have. I believe there's
Manor Market has it.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Okay. And
yeah, I think that there's ones that like really kind of cater to the keto community, and a lot of times those can be omega or grass-fed, and all you have to look for is the grass-fed, and then you're going to know that's that product.
Well, I wonder how well regulated it is. I mean, how do you know you're actually getting grass-fed butter,
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that they can't. I don't know if they can actually lie about that. I think there's some things that, because labeling can be weird, but that might be one thing that they can't really lie about that. But that's a great question. I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to get back to you.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
They also, you can use the ghee, and
Yeah.
they have that there too. I think I've seen it at Vaughn's too.
Yeah, and I'm sure that ghee is probably grass-fed dairy as well. I wouldn't be surprised on that. But still, like, because ghee is what just clarified butter, so you can clarify any butter, but really trying to make sure that it is the grass-fed.
Yeah.
Get another question too. So I asked, sometimes I struggle to think of ways to eat more plant-based meals. Getting rid of meat seems impossible when I'm planning out my meals for the week. Any suggestions on how to make a transition to eat more vegetables?
Yeah, so I think just like finding recipes that you really like, and just it's experimentation. So just constantly trying to find recipes that you might like that contains vegetables, and maybe making one day per week a vegetarian day can be really helpful. And so you're just kind of trying to increase those vegetables. And once you are able to find recipes that you like that contain vegetables, just adding them into like your toolkit, and you can use them throughout, anytime. Cookbooks are great. There's so much stuff on the internet that you can get that contains some really great recipes. There's a couple really good websites like Love and Lemons, and New York Times Cooking has really great recipes for vegetables.
There's Vegetarian Athlete Cookbook. That's one's really good.
Yeah, Kim, I'm sure you know a lot. You're vegetarian.
Most of the time.
Did you say it was called Vegetarian Athlete?
Yeah, there's Vegetarian Athletes, and then there's several of them. And then one of my favorites is the Paleo Mediterranean Cookbook. And I use a lot of those recipes, and there's a lot of fish recipes. And then I substitute some of the meat ones for, I'll use tofu or tempeh or, whatever.
Yeah, the tofu and tempeh, they can be really great substitutes for meat, just because they kind of take up whatever flavor that you're using to cook with. Great. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Thanks for the questions, guys. Okay, so I think we were here. Alcohol in moderation. So in all blue zones except one, you're going to find people enjoying alcohol in moderation, and they're doing it with food and with friends and with family. They're not just like binging on Saturdays. All the blue zones except the Seventh-day Adventists drink. And alcohol does have the effect of both increasing and decreasing markers of inflammation. It depends on the individual person, and it also depends on the amount consumed. So a high intake will promote inflammatory cytokines, which increases your inflammation in your body. But there has been some trials, some research done that showed that moderate alcohol consumption was associated with improved lipid profiles, blood pressure, and reduced reactive oxygen species, which means that you have less inflammation in your body. And red wine does have a high polyphenol anti-inflammatory content. But also, again, like no binging. You can't really save up all week and then just like end up having 14 drinks on Saturday. It doesn't work like that.
Do you have any guidelines about what is moderate? Like for a woman, that's 1 drink a day, I'm assuming, and for men, it's 2 unless they're over 65.
Yeah, I think, I do believe that that's like the recommendation. I would, it seemed like whenever I was doing my research in the blue zones, around two glasses per day was kind of the go-to for both men and women.
And most of those populations did that?
So most of them did that, except the population in Loma Linda, which is Seventh-day Adventist. They don't drink at all. They have no alcohol, and they don't do any caffeine either. So yeah, all of the populations, all the other 4 populations had moderate alcohol consumption.
Okay. And sorry, one last question about the red wine. So the high polyphenol content, like, is that any different than grapes? Like, is something about the fermentation process, does that make it higher?
Yeah, exactly. It's that fermentation process that does make it higher. And then you'll find like different areas have different polyphenol contents. Like I believe it's in Ikaria, Greece, which is one of the blue zones. Their wine that they produce there has like the highest polyphenol count in all of wine that's been studied. And it's probably to do with their soil. It's probably to do with their environment and probably how they tend to their crops. So it does depend on like what kind of, so I'm sure like, cheap red wine doesn't have as much polyphenols as another type of wine, but I'm not too sure about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so in Okinawa, a mantra is said before meals and it's practiced daily. Hara Hachi Bu, this is a 2,500-year-old Confucian mantra, and it roughly translates to eat until you are 80% full. And this is important because it literally takes like 30 minutes for your stomach to send signals to your brain that you are full. So practicing mindfulness before and during eating is key. So eating more slowly, because if you eat faster, you're probably going to eat more. So if you slow down, you're going to allow your body to respond to cues, which tells us whenever we are no longer hungry. Also, focusing on your food, avoiding distractions, turning off your phone, putting your computer away, turning off the TV. So if you're going to eat, just literally eat. You're going to end up eating a lot slower, probably going to consume less, and just savor the food more in general. Also using smaller vessels, like literally going from like a 12-inch plate to like a 9-inch plate, and you might end up eating less without even thinking about it. Also, eating until you are no longer hungry versus eating until you are actually full. So there is a difference there. If you're really listening to your body cues, you can stop whenever you are no longer have those feelings of hunger versus until you are totally full, like stuffed to the brim. And also, people in the blue zones eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or the early evening, and then they don't eat anymore for the rest of the day. So again, like portion sizes, they're eating a large breakfast, a medium-sized lunch, and a small dinner. And so longest living people, they don't necessarily pump iron, they don't run marathons, they're not joining gyms. Rather, they live in environments and set up their lives to be constantly nudged into physical activity. And almost all the blue zones have gardens. The Okinawans, they sit on the floor, so they're constantly like sitting on the floor and then getting up, getting all the way up. Sardinians, they live in vertical homes, so they're walking all the stairs in their house. The Ikarian Greece, they live in this really rugged mountainous terrain, so that just draws them outdoors to hike around. And the Seventh-day Adventists, they go on their weekly nature walks. And just in general, in these blue zones, you're going to find that houses are deconvenienced. And how can we introduce this into our lives? Well, we can do more yard work by hand. We can maybe like just do like more things by hand, or we can get a bike. Like instead of driving over to your neighbors that's 3 blocks away, you can walk over there, you can hop on your bicycle and get over there. And also having a dog can really help. There has been a study out there that says that having a dog can help people get out more regularly. So the idea is just constant movement, and constant movement will keep the metabolism up. It'll keep it high and keep it burning calories. So de-stressing and downshifting. High stress and lack of adequate sleep are both associated with inflammation, and how we can practice intentional stress reducing actions. And in each community in the blue zones, you're going to find that they have intentional stress reducing actions. Like for instance, the Okinawans, they take a moment each day to remember their ancestors. Adventists, they pray. The Ikarians, they're taking a nap, and the Sardinians, they do happy hour. Things that we can do to introduce this into our life is reading more, sleeping, getting adequate sleep, taking a nap during the day, meditating, practicing physical activity. And also blue zone communities are taking time to find their life's purpose. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, it's called Plan de Vida, the plan of your life. Just people are really willing to talk about their life purpose, and it can change, and it doesn't have to be this like really elaborate answer to what someone's life purpose is. I was reading that I think it was in Okinawa, her life's purpose was to hang out with her great granddaughter, and that is just so beautiful, just being around family and being there for them. Connecting with others. So blue zone communities do keep their aging parents, their grandparents, and their children near or in the home. And committing to a life partner can add up to 3 years of life expectancy. And choosing a social circle that supports healthy behaviors. So we are who we hang out with, essentially. And research shows that smoking, obesity, and loneliness are contagious, but also happiness is contagious too. So picking people that really lift you up. And also all but 5 of the 263 centenarians that they interviewed belonged to some faith-based community. And it didn't really matter what kind of denomination it was. It was more just like having that faith. And you know, is it having that faith? It's probably connecting with others, gathering around people and loved ones, and just practicing something similar. So in summary, increasing your bright colored fruits and vegetables, switching your refined oils to olive and avocado oils, increasing your fiber to up to 37 grams per day, getting more probiotic foods, trying to avoid the trans fats and the packaged foods, getting adequate sleep, moving more, and not necessarily like, you know, doing that hardcore exercise. I mean, that's great, but in these communities, they didn't show that. Just like moving more, parking farther away from the grocery store and walking to the grocery store. And also belonging to social circles that promote healthy behaviors. Your friends you guys can exercise together and, you know, do healthy things together. And these are my sources, because I talked a lot about different studies and all that. And any questions?
If we want to watch this again, is there a way to do that?
Yeah, it'll be on the NIHD YouTube. So yeah.
Facebook page.
Oh, and the Facebook page too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for coming, everyone. Kim and Dr. Sharma, thanks for your questions and you know, all the input and all that. I really appreciate it. It's great to have the support, and I think it was a good topic. Yeah, Marcia's saying fun and interesting topic. Just returned from Costa Rica. I can see their side of it all. Yeah. All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys, for joining on. Okay, should we call it a wrap? Thanks, guys.
Bye, thank you.